everyone, and welcome to the Heroic Council. I'm Sarah Hannison. I am serving as your host today. And today we have a special treat. It's just Tim and I, but we are going to really dive into video and using video for your business and using it well. So welcome, Tim, to the show. And you can tune in every Monday. So Tim's going to cue up the intro for us, and then we're going to dive right in.
This podcast is part of the Shareable Podcast Network. Learn more at shareable.fm.
Wonderful.
Cool. Everything
Perfect.
works.
Yeah. I know we don't have our fearless leader producer, Jeff, with us today. So we're always want to make sure everything's going well, but we want to keep it going because the podcast has been great. We're so happy for all of you that tune in and listen every Monday, 2 p.m. Eastern. And, you know, we like to answer questions live. So if you have those, put those in the chat. But Tim, let's dive in and get started. So let's get this party started about making videos for your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to kind of get started from the very beginning. I guess, why should people, first of all, make videos for their business? That's a big question. And also when a client comes to me and they're like, oh, I want to make a video, one of the first things I'm going to want to figure out is why. It's not the first question I'll ask, but it's the first thing I want to figure out. And the reason why it's not the first question I ask is because generally when I ask the question why, it's kind of a big question and we want to be really specific about it. So we're kind of going to start with some really specific questions that kind of dig at their internal motivations for doing something. And that's probably, if you're going to consult with anybody, that's probably a good place to start. Like, why are you trying to do the thing that you're reaching out for me to do? Does that sound right?
Absolutely. And I actually saw that missed a lot when I was in marketing in my career before I was a productivity coach. I often felt like people miss that reason of why are we doing this thing in the first place?
Yeah.
So we would see that someone else did something and we would want that. So it's almost like that, like chasing what's shiny and new. And I always reminded my team and myself, like, wait, time out. Why are we doing that in the first place? Just because someone else is doing it or someone else has it doesn't mean it's right for us and our audience and our business objectives. So yeah, I think that's a really important place for people to start.
Yeah, because the other thing that's important for me as the video producer is I want to know for two reasons, what is the value that I can provide my client? You know what I mean? Like when I talk to them, I want to know that whatever I'm building for them is going to, for them, feel like the money was well spent and they got more value in it than they had initially put into it. And it may not be like a lot of people may not want something purely for oh, we want to increase sales and we want to see growth in these areas. It may purely be because we think this thing is cool and it's for vanity purposes, and that's totally fine too. But that's the reason why you want to know what success looks like for them. And they may think that they know what it is that they're reaching out to you about and why they want it, but there's a good chance that there are some alternative things that they're they may be thinking about, but they're not articulating to you, maybe because they forget, maybe because they don't think it's important, maybe they don't want to articulate it because they don't want to tip their hat at something that might indicate that this might be, the pricing might be different for them or something like that. And the second reason that I want to find out what kind of value this is going to bring in is because for me on the vendor side, that's also going to factor into how much I'm going to charge. Because if I feel like a video that has the possibility of making this client I don't know, $100,000, then I'm going to be okay, well, I feel like $10,000 is reasonable for this product depending on what's in the deliverables, because it's gonna move the needle pretty significantly for them in some way, or there's going to be 10 times the benefit from whatever they put into it.
That's a really good point. And I think too, from a client perspective, it is interesting to think about that also. What financial return are you expecting to get from this video or piece of content you're creating, and how worth it is that to you? Because I think you often just think, oh, I need a video because everyone else has one, or I need these clips for social media. And in reality, it's do you need TikTok clips or footage? I don't know. It just depends on the business that you're in, and really evaluating what is that budget? What are you willing to spend? And I think that also is going to affect the quality of what you get. And it's important before you reach out to a vendor to think about what is the budget and being honest about that, because you want to be fair to yourself and what you're paying, but you also definitely want to be fair to the vendor to make sure that you're paying fairly for something and getting a quality product in return.
Yeah, something that it doesn't happen every time, but almost all the time. Like they'll always say, you know what I mean? Like we want to keep the budget tight, you know what I mean, on this. But then I'll ask, okay, well, what is the budget? And they won't have a response to that. So like usually when that comes up, it means like what you're really saying isn't that you want I actually haven't figured this out. I don't know if you have any feedback on that. I feel like I heard some good ideas for why that happens, but it's like, oh, we want to keep the budget relatively small in this. Okay, like, okay, well, what's your budget? I have no perception of what small means to you, because small for you is going to be different from small for somebody else. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that when people come in with something?
Yeah, I think the hard thing is like no one wants to throw out that first number. So I don't want to say X and you go, oh, that's not enough, or that's crazy amount. It's because and your point you just said was so true. Like I don't know what small is for you. It is relative to every organization. A small business has a very different marketing budget than a large corporation.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's definitely worth taking into account. I think what's appropriate is going into that conversation with a ballpark range of what you're used to spending. Because the other thing I saw a lot in my career in marketing was that we would go through all of these steps, right? Like discovery and proposal, and we would spend hours together. And then we would get to the conversation about the budget. And if we didn't align, then we just wasted a lot of time.
Yeah.
So I really think it's also appropriate to have that budget conversation fairly early on before you waste each other's time. And I'm sure some salespeople have different perspectives on that, but that was always something I really considered as like, let's not waste each other's time here. I'm in this ballpark. Where are you?
Yeah.
And we can cut this cord quickly, or we can move forward because it's mutually beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess if I was in that position, I might be like, let's say hypothetically you're coming in to me, or like you showed me a video that you really liked, all right? And my next question would be like, okay, well, why do you like this video? Or in my head, that might be the next question. But if you were really hunting for a price at that point, I'd probably be along like, oh, I usually do a video for that between $5,000 to $7,000, right? It's just a random number I threw out there. Like, and then so you get a ballpark idea of like what a video like that looks like, and then the next question would be like, okay, well, what is it about this video? Like, why are you interested in going in this direction? You know what I mean? And at that point, you might be like, oh, well, I thought it was super cool, or I saw my competitor doing something like this, and I felt like I had to do something like this, and and then we dig a little bit more into like what that actually might look like. But yeah, I think that's a very good observation, though. I like that.
Yeah. Definitely. The other thing in terms of budget, and I know, Tim, you did this for me when we worked together. You had said to me, well, for this budget, I can give you this plus a couple of other things that I hadn't even really thought about.
Yeah.
So you were able to look at the budget I had and tell me all the things I could get for that particular budget. So I came to you saying, I want a video. And you said, well, what if we did one shorter video instead of two longer videos, but I gave you all these clips for social media. So that's where I think also that budget conversation can be really helpful to think about your goals and the budget together, because that helps someone like Tim, who's creative, be creatively on your behalf. I didn't always know what was available to me or what you were capable of producing unless you told me, and then it was really a win-win. So your vendor might have things in their wheelhouse that you don't even really know about that could really, really benefit you. So let them, share those different ideas for you within the budget and the, timeline and goals that you have.
Yeah, because like marketers have all these a lot of new tools nowadays, and like a single video wouldn't necessarily go as far as it used to. And it's important for us to think about like, okay, like if we want this to be successful, you know what I mean? Like, where is it going to be successful? And that will probably mean nowadays, and I'm not saying like it won't mean something, it can't be a single video, but I'm saying there's a good chance that it'll be like, oh, this might be better and more effective as a campaign. You know what I mean? Where you have like a series of content that goes with this thing. Versus just like one video. Because like I want, if your goal is to sell something or raise awareness for something, like I want it to go a long way. And like if you post something online, like you're gonna post it, the people who see it are gonna see it, and then it's gonna be gone forever. Unless you like, you know, like repost it later or something along those lines. So that's why like I try to recommend for my clients, depending on what they're trying to do, that they approach video content creation more as a campaign than as like a single event that they push. You know what I mean?
That is so smart. Yeah, that's actually genius. I hope people listening really understand that, because you're right. And one thing that is important is to think about, how are you going to actually use that video? Because it's great to create this content, but if you don't have a plan to promote it, email it, share it on your social network, share it with your audience, put it on your website, like, what are you going to do with it? Put it on the server, the SharePoint file share, and let it sit there. That's totally useless. So definitely think about how can you promote this content once you have it. You got to have a plan for that.
And it might be really great, like just to do like 15-second clips, like that you're posting like over the course of a week or a month or something like that, versus like a minute and a half or a 2 or 3 minute video. And that's gonna like change my thinking, and it should change your thinking on what's in these videos and how they're produced. You know, if we're doing a 1.5 minute video piece, like you're going to like execute a narrative way different than you're going to do it in like a 15-second piece, because you need to communicate a lot of information in a very short period of time in that 15-second piece. So it's going to dramatically change how you produce it. So and the other thing is, like, if we're doing a series of 15-second videos, you're going to get more bang for your buck than if you do a 2.5 to 3 minute video, and you may not end up paying like any more or much more for that series of content than you would have for like that one long video, which you're going to post once, and it may live on your website, but that's going to be it. And then it's going to make less of an impact on a smaller amount of people.
Absolutely. I think one important thing to point out here too is understanding your audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I mentioned before, is your audience on TikTok? Are they on LinkedIn? Are they on Facebook? Are they on your website? Maybe you have an audience that is, I work with someone who works in nursing homes, right? And they do marketing for a nursing home. So it's just all a different audience, and you really have to understand who you're serving and who is this content going to be for, and also what platform are they viewing it on. Is this a TV commercial?
Yeah,
is this
absolutely.
an iPhone, a tablet, a big screen, a little screen? And that was something, Tim, you are always great with reminding me, like, we're shooting this for Instagram stories, which is a different layout than of something that'll be on the website. So I think that's really important. It's like, where is your audience? How are they consuming this content?
And if like and once again, if you're posting those like shorter 15-second clips, then that might give you some opportunities that you may not have had before. Like if you were trying to get out, like if you have like a hierarchy of information that you want to get out there, you know what I mean? It gives you more opportunity to communicate more things potentially. Mm-hmm. So like the messaging can be a little bit different. And versus like if we're doing a 2-minute video, then you kind of want to keep the messaging to be like kind of centered around, you know, your primary, like, we're selling this thing, right? And you might have some other auxiliary information, but the primary message is this thing. But if you have a series of videos, you can do a whole lot of things. Like, let's say hypothetically it's for public health, and you have a lot of things, like, for instance, during COVID, you may want to communicate all the recommended guidelines for when you're outside your home during COVID, and this will give you the opportunity to like do a series of videos, each one talking about like a different guideline or something along those lines. And maybe they'll link back to like the full page guidelines or something like that.
That's a solid point that we should really just hone in on. Again, you're making so many good points, Tim. But thanks. The goal of the video should also think about what is the next action you want the recipient of the video to take. Do you want them to buy something? Do you want them to go down like the rest of the CDC guidelines for COVID? You know, what is it that you want them to do? Because so often I watch a video and it's just sort of sitting there and I'm going, well, what action am I supposed to take? And that's not clear at all.
Yep.
So I think that's important. I also think, speaking of COVID, you know, we're coming out of this now. So it's important also to make sure your video content isn't overly dated, right? So if you're maybe a health organization and COVID is relevant to you right now, then yes, the purpose of that video could be for the time that we're currently in.
Yep.
I used to be in a seasonal business, and so I was always careful that the video didn't say what year it was, because then I wouldn't be able to use that content or footage for years to come. So I think that's also really important to think about, that call to action, but also timeliness and relevance to your audience. And is this content you want to use for a couple years? Be careful then of the references that are in the video.
Yeah, actually, that's funny, because that's something that I'm currently dealing with my clients now, because a lot of states still have their COVID restrictions and stuff. And so a lot of people are wearing masks, and we have to have a conversation whether people or not should be wearing masks in the video, because there's a good chance that, by the fall next year, most states probably will have listed most of their mask mandate, but it's possible that, a new strain of COVID could come and then suddenly we're all wearing masks again.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, that's a big topic of how we're positioning this stuff with COVID. Do we want it to be a post-COVID video where this is the world after COVID? Or do we want it to be just like COVID never happened and we just want this to be in the real world? Or is COVID still going on? And are we still shooting it that way? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a really good example of this. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And something I wanted to kind of get into too is just I wanted to talk a little bit about the aesthetic of the video, and specifically how to work with your creative or your vendor. You know what I mean? And what should vendors think about when they're working with a creative to design their aesthetic? This doesn't just have to be video, but video, I think it's a really great thing to do. Because Sarah, when we were working together for your former company, how did you approach the aesthetic direction of these things? Because I would probably have approached it differently than I do now with my current clients.
Yeah, and that is important, because you want to also be pretty much in love with this content that's getting created, because if you're on the marketing team, this is content you're going to see again and again. So you really actually need to like it. In fact, love it. And I would sometimes say, oh, I'm so sick of seeing these pictures. And I would forget that I was sick of them, but to the customer, they were new. Yeah. And so you want to love them enough that you can see yourself really using these images or this footage for a while to get the most bang for your buck. So I think when you're approaching aesthetic, it's important to think about your brand, of course. What is your brand aesthetic? What does it look like? What colors do you use? Are you a summer business? So if you're like a roofing business, maybe doesn't do work in certain times of year, or maybe you run a Christmas store, you want to make sure that it's on point with your brand, but also how does it look? How does it feel? How is it lit? Is it muted colors or more vibrant colors? Because that really does say something non-verbally to the audience about what your brand is. So I would always bring examples, and I sometimes struggled to know what I liked or what I disliked, but I would often bring those and say, here's some ideas, and then we would talk about it. And that's where I think working with someone like you who's very creative is wonderful. Oh, it looks as if I've lost Tim. Uh-oh. Well, if anyone listening live, I know there's a few of you out there. If you have specific questions until Tim pops back on, that would be wonderful. I know one of the other things we were going to talk about was really qualities to look for in a vendor. So when you've got a vendor and you're looking to interview them, what are some of the things that you should be looking for in a vendor? I think certainly that they are professional, that they are going to show up on time. Again, I had a constantly changing schedule. So I had things that were, sometimes we needed to reschedule. Sometimes it would rain and we'd have to reschedule. And so while I hated doing it, I always loved working with vendors who were professional, reliable, but also adaptable. And they could adjust, things if we needed to. They had some availability. It wasn't as if, well, we can only work with you next year. They were able to work with me then and there in that moment. So I think that's really important. Tim already mentioned, working within your budget is really important. You can find wonderful vendors who are very expensive. And if that's not in your budget, it's probably never going to work out that well. So I think that's also a really important nuance, is to make sure that you are able to afford them and that you're aligned with where you're falling in terms of budgets. Aesthetic, we were just talking about that. Does this vendor provide content that you like? Do you like how their content looks? If they always shoot at certain angles, or they have a different way that they make things look, is that something that you enjoy? If you don't really like their aesthetic and what they're showing off on their website, then it's probably not something that you are going to want to use yourself. So I think right off the bat, that's something that's really great for you to consider. The other thing is timeliness. How quickly are they going to be able to produce what you need? So if this is something you need next week, you need to find a vendor who's going to be able to knock that thing out for you very quickly. Alternatively, maybe you have a year to do this project. You need to make sure that they have time in their schedule to really work on that with you. So those are some of my tips for today. So I'm just checking on Tim here. I think we're going to have to wrap up without him because he has lost his internet. So I'll finish it up for today. We'll do a short mini episode today. But those are some of the good points. Other qualities to work for in a vendor I mentioned before. Reliability. So you want a vendor that you can count on, not someone who's going to call you the night before and need to cancel or flake out. You need somebody who has a team who can support you, who has a backup plan if something goes wrong, has extra equipment. So I think that that's also just really important to keep that going. Okay, so another thing to think about, we talked about budget, timeliness, also that they're relevant to your particular audience. Have they worked in that field before? Do they understand your field? If you work in a certain field and they say, we know nothing about that, we've never worked in that space before, I do think that that's really important to just think about. Have they worked with other clients in that space? That can be good or bad if they have or they haven't. It might be bringing a fresh perspective if they've never done it before. But if you're in a specific industry, it could be very helpful that they have some relevant experience to help you with. So those are some qualities that I would look for in a vendor. Certainly getting back to you quickly, getting proposals to you quickly. And of course, if they say a budget, sticking to the budget, sticking to the timeline. Those are things that I always looked for in a vendor. So those are my kind of quick tips for today. So I hope everyone enjoyed that. If there's any questions, you can type them into the chat. Otherwise, make sure to tune in every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern, and we're going to get together and keep asking questions. And so you can subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, YouTube, Facebook, also live streams on LinkedIn. So all that info can be found at thesuperheroinstitute.org/heroic, and all links will be in the show notes. Thanks so much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this quick, short episode, but we'll see you next time.